Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we discuss media production every single day of the week. Let's go ahead and jump into our questions for today. DJ, what do we have?
Guy Cochran is up first from Seattle, Washington. Guy says, editing our church Christmas concert, hearing a light ringing and a few harsh feedback sounds when people clap. How do you prevent this from occurring? Behringer XR18 and a variety of mics are used.
Now go ahead, Alex.
So everyone that's done even a bit of sound knows that equalization is our friends. But before we even talk about how to fix those types of problems with EQ, we should talk about the basics that need to be covered. So we need to talk about gain structure. So starting with your PA, I would make sure that if you have powered speakers, or even if you have passive stuff with a power amp, make sure everything's at unity gain to start with. Make sure your faders during your sound check are at unity gain. Pre-solo fader, everything. And then generally with digital mixers, now there's some different school of thoughts on this, and even some console manufacturers will have different recommendations, but a lot of people may try to get their peaks when they're setting their preamp gain at either -18 or say -20. There are some exceptions there too, but you kind of want to standardize on something there, and then you can start looking at EQ for the individual inputs, which I always do. So high pass and low pass filters are your friends. You may want to take a look. I don't know what kind of mics you're using too. Obviously, starting with great mics is also something you always want to start out with. But you can also fix some problems with the basic filtering and EQ on the individual inputs. And then, of course, once you get the mics sounding the way that you want, then you may need to look at your main output. So on that XR18, you would go to your main left, right, and you could pull up either a parametric EQ or even say a 31 band graph EQ, and look at the RTA. Make sure you've turned on the RTA so you can see where those problems are happening, because as things start to feed back, you will see on the graph, you'll start to see that RTA at that problematic frequency go up, and then you can easily find it and pull that down by however many dB you need to until that problem goes away. And lastly, another thing to think about too is one thing people don't always think about is sometimes you might just have too much PA for that room. So even if your gain structure is wrong and you've covered all the basics, you may have too much PA for that room. So that's something that you may need to consider and either turn down the input sensitivity on the back of those powered speakers, or at the power amp, just turn the input sensitivity of the power amplifier down.
Go ahead, Craig.
Just to add to what Alexander was saying, there's two things that I would want to look at as well. Not just the main PA, but any monitors that are being used for foldback, and also mic positioning. We often talk about choosing the right mics for their sound or even their pattern, but we need to look at the positioning of the microphone, where it's being aimed, and what else is being picked up in that pattern.
Craig, when you talk about foldbacks, can you, for the folks that are listening, can you describe the difference between the foldbacks and the main PAs?
Yeah, so the talent on stage, the singers, the band, will need to have often speakers, wedges, or side fills to be able to hear themselves and hear each other, rather than just relying on acoustically or what's coming back off the main PA from the room. So unless they're using in-ears, which is more of the trend now, but most people still, especially in smaller venues or more community-based situations, will rely on a wedge speaker in front of the singer or the guitar player, usually something right beside the drummer. And if you've got a lot of people on stage that you're trying to hear, like a choir, who all need to hear the guitar player or the lead singer, you might have wedges in front of them that are further away from them, and therefore louder, and that's where you're going to get a problem with the microphones.
Next question.
Zach Stahl-Smith from Chautauqua, New York wants to know, when utilizing a console like the Yamaha CL5, do you connect Dante-enabled devices to the console via Dante or via patch XLR cables? What would be the pros and cons of both setups?
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, if I have Dante-enabled devices and I have a Dante-enabled console, which is what a CL5 is, I'm always going to patch every possible thing I can via Dante. And the reasons are are pretty straightforward. Basically, it's a digital to digital connection. So that's the cleanest possible way to connect an audio source to an audio console. And basically, my rule of thumb is if I've got a Dante network on a show, I want to get every signal, every analog signal, but really every audio signal that I can into the Dante network as early in the stream as possible. And then everything becomes Dante and I can patch anything to anything. So if I had a Dante-enabled device like an AVIO or something that somebody handed me, I might... Actually,
the AVIOs are they wouldn't handle a mic signal, right? So these would be line signals in from whatever devices that you're working with.
Exactly, and it was interesting. This just popped into my head from a show that I did very recently with someone who looks a lot like our host. There is actually an application that would make sense to have a Dante-enabled device that you still patched analog into the console, and that is if I've got my own Dante network. I bring in my own gear. I've got my own Dante network that's configuring all of my devices. But I want to patch into a house system that is its own Dante network. Sometimes if you just try to combine those two Dante networks together, you can get into all sorts of issues. That the house system could use a DDM system, which makes you have to sign on to certain things and have to have an account. It can be very complicated, not to mention the fact that as soon as I get on a house Dante network, that gives me the ability to change something with the house network, which then means that I can be on the hook if something goes weird with the house Dante network. So for all of those reasons, it can then be a really good idea for me to just patch via analog interface so that my Dante network is staying both from a digital clocking standpoint and from a patching standpoint and everything else completely separate from an in-house Dante network. So hopefully those two scenarios make sense.
Yeah, and Mickey said that we use Dante bridges to navigate the additional DA and AD stages. Have you used Dante bridges, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is exactly what it says it is. You just end up with a box that has one Dante network and another Dante network, and then internally in the box, they're just talking via digital signal, some sort of AES EBU kind of digital signal, but it's still keeping the two Dante networks, the network itself, physically separate. They also make boxes that will have like a Dante card and a MADI card, or a Dante card and a Ethernet, whatever, some other type of network. But yeah, there's several shows that I use Dante bridges on a regular basis.
Yeah, I know we use an RME for getting from Dante to MADI, oftentimes because things like our FS HDRs or FS4s only do MADI. So yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Craig Kadoki from Toronto, Canada asks, why do such a small percent of music produced in the Atmos era use a center channel for anything more than what would be otherwise considered crosstalk? I know it's getting better, but it seems like missed potential.
Not good, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really ROI and who's listening and how are they listening. It's no longer the days where to listen to music, you kind of sit there in your home hi-fi system and sit down and just listen to music. People do, but that's not the bulk of the listening experience. And so people are listening on cheap earbuds. They're, listening on the bus out of their phone, not using any earphones.
For Atmos, though, it usually gets folded down into that either way. So I think this is more of a mixing approach to the whole thing. So go ahead, Craig. Explain a little bit of your question there.
Yeah, I was going to say I've started getting more and more interested in what I can do with some of the stuff coming out of my venue, and looking at starting to listen to a lot of different music in at least a 5.1 reduction from Atmos. And even that, like, there's some really great tracks that have been rebuilt from the 60s and 70s that Apple has famously put into playlists and whatnot to show it off. But then anything new, especially any of the pop stuff, seems to be really, it's just like a token effort of, well, we'll put it in 5.1 or in Atmos because that'll get us into those playlists or something. But they're not really taking advantage of it. And fortunately, the environment that I'm listening to, I've the ability to mute each individual part of the 5.1 channels. So I can just solo up the center channel or the surrounds and listen to what they're doing to try and deconstruct it. And it just seems like a real wasted potential.
Yeah, Mickey said labels rules, and to expand on that a little bit, I did ask the exact question you're asking to some folks that I will remain unnamed, but they are one of the top live mixing, surround mixing in the world for events, right? And their explanation was that when we started 5.1 before Atmos, everyone was mixing it properly. So if you go back to like Fleetwood, the remix of Fleetwood Mac Rumors, for instance, you'll notice that everything is right where it belongs and everything else. The issue in Queen, by the way, so a lot of the Queen remasters are all, the 5.1s are really good. What geeks figured out is if I grab the 5.1 channel, I can have the voice all by itself. So the record labels became very sensitive and told people specifically don't put the vocals into the center channel by themselves because they're afraid that people would take them and use them for remixes or just show them off by themselves, whatever that was. Now, that argument has become somewhat null and void because the AI tools like Moises do it automatically no matter what you do. Like they just extract that stuff out, and it doesn't really matter today to make that possible. So I, as someone who does a lot of work in theaters, I'm very sensitive to mixing into the center channel is absolutely necessary. You have to put things in the center channel, or we can't. You can't. It doesn't. What happens is that you have on a theater. If you think about a screen and everyone here, if you do a phantom center works for everybody down the spine right here, down the spine of the theater. But as soon as you start a couple seats over and everything's going to sound heavy one side or the other if you're doing a phantom center. So film mixers will almost always still go back to the music mixers do this thing where they do the 4x4 or the phantom center. The film mixers will all put it in the center because that's where it belongs. So we oftentimes there's this kind of back and forth, of doing that. But I think it's that's why we don't hear it that much. I'm also very interested in experimentation with ASAF, Apple Spatial Audio Format. Now that's not for your home audio system; it's really for your headset. And it's an ambisonic based system. So that's going to be a whole other set of things to think about. Next question.
Via the QR code, Nathan Samuel from Seattle, Washington asks, how do you approach gain staging for a wireless mic for a live stream? What are the steps?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, remember, in a wireless mic, your microphone preamp is in the microphone transmitter itself. So you want to make sure that your microphone, whether you're using an internal microphone in a transmitter or an external microphone, is not overdriving that first stage preamp that is in the transmitter. And most analog transmitters have heavy compression or limiting in them to prevent deviation because it is FM, and if something goes too loud, it's going to deviate in the frequency of that FM microphone. So they usually keep it to make sure that it keeps it within the band limitations of that particular transmitter. So you want to set your gain on the microphone transmitter itself. If it has any kind of level indicator, like a LED indicator that goes green into red, you got to make sure it's not going into the red, because if you clip there going into that transmitter, there's no way to bring it back down again because it's in the transmitter. And if you're in one of the newer.
Now, on the other side of that, though, isn't it a big challenge that you can't have it be really low because otherwise you're going to be in the noise floor?
Going to get into that. The second thing is you don't want to have it too low so it's just barely lighting up that LED, because then you'll have to, every step down the line in the gain staging, you'll have to crank that level up to get a good usable level, and you're going to be bringing up the noise of that preamp all the way down the line. So you want to have it in the middle there. And then work from your receiver on down. Make sure your receiver is receiving a good clean signal, and then try and get it up as high as you can without it going over, going into your board, so that it's not clipping either, or it's not too low either, so that you have to minimize the amount of hiss or amplifier or self noise that will be carried throughout the rest of the game.
And Nikki said at 24 with a digital 24-bit transmission, I would not worry about burying the signal underneath the noise floor. And then for high quality receivers, Courtney, you should be able to. The receiver itself can generate tone, right? So, like a negative 20 or.
I haven't seen it generate.
I think like Electrosonic can
necessarily,
do
maybe.
Yeah.
Have a tone generator built in, but I suppose you could, or you could generate tone with a transmitter somehow. But to go all the way through. But yeah, you can set a level that way.
Mickey said modern RXs all have signal generators, so you still have to deal with. You can't get the tone from the transmitter, but you can't get it from the receiver. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, most of that's pretty much covered. It depends on the manufacturer of the wireless system, because they all have slightly different nomenclature in their settings. So, for example, like Sennheiser on the transmitters, they have their input sensitivity, and they, starting at 0, and then they go in increments of, I think, 3 or 6 dB in negative numbers. But if you look at Shure, for example, like an SLXD system, the transmitter will default to what they call a mic offset of 0. That's the factory setting, which I like to leave it at that. And then there's no negative, or there's no padding. It's only increments of plus 3 dB. Right, so 0, 3, 6, 12, and so on and so forth. So I like to leave it at 0, and then my receiver, the output gain on that, which, by the way, for some reason, Shure sets it to plus 12. I like to set it to just 0, and then I'll adjust the mic preamp to where I like it to be on the console itself. Now, sometimes you have really quiet singers. Like it's really hard getting gain sometimes out of really young kids. If you've ever had the pleasure of trying to mic, kids at a Christmas concert, and they're 8 or 10 years old, and they're not particularly confident. Sometimes that transmitter, you might need to add a little bit more gain there to try to get a little bit more out of them. So it just depends on the talent.
Go, Jeffrey.
And I'll add the idea, because I do a lot of live music, so it's mostly coming from the board, and of course the sound engineer is mixing the board for the room, coming into the live stream from there. That makes it a little bit tougher when it comes through the live stream. So I use things like the TC Electronics finalizer to help with pushing out some additional signal without distorting. And it's also very important that you know the frequencies that are coming through that room, because you'll end up getting some sort of static going through. So maybe also think about your antenna distribution system, so it gives the best signal that comes in, so you can gain it properly.
You go, Craig.
I just wanted to add, and Mickey had put in the chat, but I've done a couple of events where we've actually taken a Minirator, an NTI Minirator, with an adapter cable XLR into a transmitter to set tone from there, to set a level.
And is that setting it at the mic level or at a line level for the TX?
You're replicating the expected level of what the lavalier microphone, in this case, it was a body pack for a musical theater show. So you're replicating the actual level that you're going to get from before somebody would be able to blow out the microphone.
And is the and what's the product that you're using for that?
The generator was a Minirator, NTI Minirator.
NTI Minirator. Okay, that's new for me.
Okay, yeah.
Next question.
Zach Stahlsmith from Chautauqua, New York. Has anyone used Dante Cloud to test with or in productions? Thoughts?
I think we keep thinking about it. So a lot of us, the thing is I think that the Dante Cloud, of course, in some ways, I don't think it was the only thing, but it was a response to necessary issues in COVID. But of course, it took a long time to get built. And by the time they did that, a lot of us were back to back to the thing. And Mickey asked also about, is it Dante Connect that you're discussing? But there is, Dante. I mean, Audinate has been working on getting this much more workable in a cloud environment, and I haven't had the opportunity or the need to do that kind of connection in the cloud so far. So we'll see how it fleshes out. Next question.
From Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. Paul asks, what do you think of the initiative to turn old city buses into rehearsal spaces for Austin, Texas musicians?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I think it's a great idea. I remember when Tony Hsieh was trying to do stuff like that for just going to Vegas and staying there. And there's many different types of buses that already have it for rehearsal space and for recording space as well. Like, for instance, they every year at NAMM you have the Lennon Tour Bus, which is basically a recording studio in a bus. Now, that's a different type of bus, a regular style like a school bus or a city bus. You do have some things to overcome. The first thing that you have to worry about is it's basically a tin can with glass windows, and that also has to be pretty much muted out. If you're doing it for recording, you're going to really have to think about it. But if you're doing it just for rehearsals, it's not as big of a deal. The other thing you're worrying about is the space. So it's a long tube rather than, some space where you could put a set of drums, you could put the musicians in front of that. So you have to think about that. And then finally, the only other thing that you really have to worry about is if it's still going to be on wheels at the end, then the bus will start to bounce. So they'll have to jack it up and make sure that it stabilizes from there. I actually did a mini bus, rehearsal bus about 15 years ago, and we you had to do it on a dime. So a lot of moving carpet and a lot of wood pallets and things like that. It looked really cool, and it was great for rehearsals.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And this one in particular, I wish they had some pictures. This is the one in particular, this bus. And I assumed it was going to be stationary, but they're actually planning on having the ability for the musicians to kind of book it. And so one of the benefits is this accessibility where it can, come to at least a location closer to the artist. And also, of course, no one wants all this loud music in their apartments or anywhere else. So you can position this in a place where you're not going to get a lot of complaints also, which is great. And there was a big boom with voiceover kind of in the start of the pandemic. I was trying to find, there was a couple van life folks that really went out on the road and converted some of the space into a small little voiceover studio. This is a bigger one, but she made a really impressive little vocal studio here with keyboard and everything she needs, but that she can live out of this and kind of be on the road for periods of time. So I think this is a great idea.
Good, Courtney.
Well, there's, one main problem with rehearsals is nobody likes to live next to a rehearsal hall for a band who's going to be playing the same song over and over. And I can say that as a person who lives less than 20 yards from a sound recording studio where they leave the doors open occasionally. And at night, that can be a problem. And a bus is not really good at isolating sound. Two problems with that is it's got parallel glass windows down either side of it. So for acoustics, for recording or anything, that makes it pretty bad unless you're putting in a bunch of sound dampening in front of the windows. And the other problem is, are you running the air? What are you doing for, air conditioning? And in Texas, it's going to get kind of hot in the summer inside there, especially with some tube amplifiers and a bunch of sweaty musicians playing for 14 hours. So you're going to have the air conditioning on or something on like that to get air in. Otherwise, you're going to have the windows open. If you have the windows open, then you're going to be bothering everybody else that's in that junkyard and practicing in the bus right next door to you. So I see several inherent problems with this. I think maybe the best way is to keep the bus mobile and let it drive around so it's never near anybody more than about 30 seconds so they can't have time to complain. So that might make it a good idea, but then you got to deal with enough power to power all the instruments at high levels inside that bus while it's moving. So I see a lot of problems with this design. Most rehearsal halls, and there are lots of them in Hollywood, are super sound isolated. They may have 7 or 8 halls inside a single warehouse, but they're all sound isolated, so one band doesn't hear the next band rehearsing. They're all sealed up, and they have special air conditioning units that are designed not to conduct sound from one rehearsal space into the next. They have to be fairly carefully designed, and I don't know if this is going to really work.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know exactly what you would, how you would make those work. I've seen a lot of different rehearsal studios or recording studios even be done in a lot of different ways, not a bus. I mean, obviously I've seen the John Lennon bus at NEB, but outside of like that from a rehearsal space, I have seen people weld together 2 storage containers, two shipping containers, and then isolate those. And they've had, they floated them inside of that storage container. It worked pretty well. You couldn't hear much on the outside, couldn't hear much on the inside. It worked pretty well as a permanent location. Also, we've worked with folks that have used a toy hauler, but not a toy hauler. Double expando on the back, and it's like I can't think of the name of it, but it's like a
fifth wheel.
No, not a fifth wheel though. A camper that has a toy hauler on the back, and they use the toy hauler area as a recording space, and then they put all the gear in the van, the caravan part of that section there, and they can drive it around, and they were able to they were picking up local bands to do recordings. I wouldn't say that they were perfect, but it wasn't bad. Another one that we worked with some folks in Africa that got some funding, an NGO that got some funding that took it was a 14-foot cargo truck, and then they did a double expando on that, and then they made the walls on the inside of that as it popped out about 3 inches thick, with air. And then they then they had lead lining, and then they had something else on, to kind of deaden everything out. Wasn't perfect because the double expando breaks all the seals and does all the things and everything else. But if you're in the middle of nowhere in Africa and there's not a lot of other noise coming in, so it was mostly about getting the good recording. But what was cool was they could pull it together. They could drive to a village in Masvingo, Zimbabwe, and open that thing up and bring in a group of people and do incredible recordings of African artists. It was really cool. So there's a couple other ideas too. Next question.
James Fosline from Minneapolis, Minnesota asks, for a Christmas present to your sibling, what HDMI cable do you get them to improve their soundbar?
I go to Courtney.
Well, you want to get them one that is eARC certified. So HDMI 2.1 or 2.2 would be even better. So get them an HDMI 2.2 certified cable. Keep it short, just enough length to go from your TV to your soundbar or to your AVR equipment like this. So this way the HDMI cables will go from your different sources into your TV. And then you use the eARC-enabled cable to go into the 1 or 2 maybe HDMI connectors that are on the back of your TV into your AVR. And make sure you go into that port on the TV that it says eARC on it or ARC on it, because that's the audio return channel, and eARC is enhanced audio return channel. So it'll have a little more control than can go down that HDMI cable to the soundbar. So if you have the same brand soundbar as your TV, a lot of times the TV can actually take control of the soundbar and put menus and things on the TV for the soundbar itself, so that you can make adjustments to the soundbar without having to look at the little LED display on the soundbar itself. You'll get a full menu system and a lot of controls over on the TV to control your soundbar that you may not have if you don't have the proper HDMI cable, like 2.2 enabled.
Next question.
Kevin Hartman from Dallas, Texas, via the QR code wants to know, how do you manage listening to both the show and comms at the same time in the same headset when mixing a show?
I don't know. I think Brian might have done that a couple times. I've seen him put these things together.
Yeah, once or twice. I don't know if somebody set this question up just for me. Now I'm gonna beg some forgiveness, and I'm gonna answer this for 2 scenarios. One, It sounds like the questioner is asking in the context of like mixing a stream.
Well,
So
I
where
think
you-
a lot of times one of the problems you get into is that you have like the two headsets like hanging over top of each other. I've got the program audio, and then I've got my comms, and hopefully it's a single muff, if not a double muff, and you're trying to figure out how to get all those things to belong together.
Well, and yeah, so there's about 15 different ways to do this, all of which I've tried at some point. And so digging into the specifics, it's so dependent on which mixing console you're using, what your comm system is, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll speak in general for web stream mixing. I would use an announcer station like you would see on television.
These are the sound device, like are the
commentators.
studio
Yep.
technologies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you know
And-
which one you use?
Oh golly, I don't remember off the top of my head. There are various ones. So there's like Dante enabled ones, there's analog enabled ones, et cetera, et cetera. The plus to them is that you can inject a stereo line level signal along with your intercom. Now, one of the things that I would do to help me differentiate between what it was I was listening to is to pan those signals into different places in the stereo field that I'm listening to. When I do things that are mostly just talking heads, people talking, usually I put the show right in the middle, and then I'll put the intercom. Maybe even two channels of intercom, one in the left ear, one in the
Now,
right ear.
how are you
and then it
converting from
becomes-
2-wire to 4-wire?
Well, one, I don't see much 2-wire anymore.
Right.
But-
So you're getting them from what's the signal looking like there? How do you get the comm signal?
Well, and again, it's, I hate to say it depends, but it depends. Most of the free speak, most of the wireless, Boleros, et cetera, you can get a 4-wire signal out of that, which is just another line level signal for intercom. If you're using a Unity intercom system, putting that into a Dante scenario, like I said, I hate to say there's 100 different ways to do this, but there kind of is 100 ways to do this. I do think that the main thing that I would say is, if you can, once you get both your intercom signal and your show signal combined, and it can be something as simple as just using an external tiny little mixer and just taking a monitor out of your console and a signal from your comm system, however it is that's being generated, and just basically mixing them together on a little teeny tiny little 4-channel mixer. Right. I will say that you do have to be careful, because it can be tempting to just say, I'll just put the comm system into my show console and then I'll just cue it from there. And that's great until you accidentally put your comms in the show.
Exactly.
Not that I've ever done that, not that this ever happened.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. Scars. The scars.
But that gets scars. But yeah, so mixing for a live stream, that's kind of the answer. Is, for me, the biggest part is just finding a way that I can pan these things into different places in my stereo field so that I can easily just put my attention to the show, and then I can put my attention to comms. And sometimes it'll be the opposite. I might just have a single mono channel of comms, and I will set up a monitoring signal that is in stereo, where I have, say, a panel of lavs, and I'll put the panel of lavs and I'll pan them across my listening field, just the bus that I'm listening to, so that I can pick out the voices in the program separate from the intercom.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, working as a teleprompter operator, I'm faced with this all the time, because as a teleprompter operator, you have to hear the program clearly, because you might be stuffed backstage somewhere behind in a wall or in a little room somewhere, and you don't have a vision of the stage, and you have to hear the person talking on the microphone very clearly. But then you also have to hear the director as well. So you don't want to have both the program feed and the comms centered in a single earpiece. I always ask for a dual muff earpiece so that I can separate the comms into one ear and the program into the other ear. And your brain lets you separate those two, and so I can just concentrate on hearing the words coming through the left ear for the program feed and control the teleprompter to stay in perfect sync with the speaker. Because anything that distracts you from that, you will lose your place and the show will go awry. So I usually keep comms in one ear, and I'll use something like these RTX dual channel so that I have can adjust the comms and the program separately, and a dual muff earphone. And if I don't have a dual muff earphone, if they don't have them, I'll just put comms in one ear, and I'll make sure that I have a program speaker that is open, a small speaker that's open, so that I can hear the podium microphone, and I ask the mixer to give me a clean feed of the podium microphone in an open speaker near me, so that I can always directionalize and hear what's coming out of that speaker and isolate the comms. So when I hear the director shouting, the next person isn't coming up, I'll still hear that over my comms earpiece, but it won't distract me enough to make me lose my place on the show.
Good, Craig.
The only thing I'd add, because that's all really, really good information, is if you are doing this a lot, you need to get familiar with how to ask for what you need in your comm feed as well. I deal with a lot of shows where we end up with very few channels in comm, and you get a lot of people talking. And if you're the one, when I'm at the console, or when you're at a console, or doing a specific job on a show, you don't need to hear all the other chatter, and you need to be able to ask for just what you need to hear, and to be able to filter out all the extra stuff that will just distract you.
I know especially with Riedel, the nice thing is it's really, really easy to set volumes on the different PLs that are on your belt pack. So, a lot of time, with those, I'll push the ones that I don't really need to hear, but it's nice to know what's going on down, and then have the other ones up. And the first time I've used a Riedel where I actually used the Bluetooth was this last show that I did with Brian, and I just attached it to my bone conduction Bluetooth, and it just made it nice and light. The biggest problem that I had with that, it worked perfectly well. The biggest problem that I had was I kept on forgetting my belt pack because it's not connected to the headset anymore. I kept on and I got an enormous 60, 70 feet away from my belt pack before it lost signal. And so then it was kind of the digital, pull your head back, suddenly everything starts breaking up. Next question.
Paul Walhus from Austin, Texas asks, how would you use the $3,500 Universal Audio Apollo X8P Gen 2 16x22 Thunderbolt 3 for mixing and recording?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so the cool thing about these are really high-end interfaces with DSP processing in there, and there's quite a bit of DSP processing in the X8. So one of the nice things about the Unison preamps is that they inherit the characteristics of the mic preamp that you're inserting in plugin format on that particular channel. This is done not only with software, but it is also done with hardware as well. So you'll notice when you turn these things on, for example, if I insert a Manley or a Neve mic preamp or some other preamp on there, you'll hear a clicking sound of a relay engaging to ensure that it is inheriting the impedance characteristics of the preamp itself. So for example, if you look at Universal Audio's website, now they don't give you their entire plugin collection, but they are very generous with the plugin bundle that they give you there. And if you filter by mic preamps and channel strips, you can see the near unlimited palette that you have available to you. For example, if I wanted my mic preamp to sound like an Avalon 2 preamp or a Manley Vox box, this is all very expensive real hardware you could go and buy. But, you'd be spending tens of thousands of dollars. So for $3,500, you get something that you can make that mic sound like anything that you want. Now, the other cool thing is they have also specialized processing plugins for mastering as well. There's all sorts of compressors, limiters in there, and they've got reverbs and all sorts of different dynamics processing plugins available to you as well. Also worth mentioning too, Paul, right now, since you're in the US, if you buy the latest generation these are the Gen 2s, which have improved analog to digital converters, they are going to give you a free Sphere DLX modeling microphone, which is worth $1,500. Pretty stellar deal for what that is. So if you're looking for a high-end interface with lots of processing power and a lot of options, that is a good one.
And Mickey said it's a computer audio interface, so it's primarily for getting the signal in and out of the computer. I think he likes to keep most of the processing somewhere else. Next question.
By the QR code, Philip Kramer from Denver, Colorado asks, how do you approach live mixing a 5-person rock band? Drums, guitar, keyboard, bass, and vocals.
Go, Jeffrey.
Separation. To me, that's the key right there, being able to separate. Now, I'm not sure, are you doing a live band as in they're playing live and then you're recording it, or are you guys going in some sort of studio and just doing it all live at that point in time? If it's on a live stage, separation's not going to be too much of something that you can do. You could try and push them all into the corners as best as possible, put the drums on the riser, so all those high-end sounds can be in the upper atmosphere, whereas the vocal mics won't catch them. And then, of course, put the cage around the drum shield around the drums to try and limit that bleed through into the microphones. But if you are just having 5 people in a room to do a recording all at once, then things like moving blankets and partitions are great things to have, so you can separate the sounds and get those individual tracks ready to go for whatever you're using.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do, the very first thing that I do before I'm going to talk about gear and technique is I would study that band. So if you don't know their music, make sure you listen to their albums so that you can try to reproduce, as best we can in a live environment, try to reproduce that sound. Like my goal is always to try to recreate a record as much as humanly possible in a live format. So, don't try in, for example, if you're trying to mix a rock band and their sound is more of a 70s Southern rock band, you don't need to make the kick drum sound like it's Lars from Metallica, right? So it's all about understanding the artist that you're working with before you even start going down that path of, what mics are going to be used. There are certain microphones that I like to bring as well, but ultimately, especially on vocalists, if you have the luxury, it's nice to be able to, in rehearsals, test different microphone capsules to make sure you've got the best sounding one for that particular singer. Obviously, some go-tos are the tried and true SM58, which is still in use with lots of singers these days. I also I've come to really like the SE line of microphones, the V7. This is available in a wired microphone. That V7 capsule has become very popular now, and it is available as a wireless capsule for Shure and Sennheiser systems. I've also become a big fan of some of the SE drum mics. So, for example, they have the V-Pack Arena kit, and you get, for like a pretty typical 5-piece kit, you get a good collection of microphones here, including 3 clip-on tom mics, the kick drum, the V7X, which is the snare mic, and the SE8s, which are the pencil condenser microphones. So that's a great mic kit to start out with. I also have become a big fan of the BL8 as an alternative to some other boundary microphones. This thing I've got as my kick-in mic, and I often will use 2 microphones, kick in, kick out, and I will blend those 2 together. I've also really become a fan of this recently after listening to this microphone and some other setups, the Telefunken M81. Now, they have 2 versions of this microphone. This is the Dash Ace SH model. This is the low profile, and I like this because it's short and stubby. So if you've got a big mic kit with not a lot of clearance, this is a fantastic snare top or snare bottom microphone. For bass drums, not bass drums, but a bass amp, I really like the Shure SM7B microphone. And then for keyboards, often some kind of DI box. The Radial J48 Jensen Transformer stuff are really good. I've also become a big fan of the higher-end Rupert Neve stereo active DIs. These are fantastic, but you can't go wrong with Radial. Those are just some of the options that I personally go with. For drums, I typically will put triggers on my drums. I use the Roland drum triggers, and I'm not triggering sounds or replacing the real sounds. I am simply using these triggers as triggers for the noise gates to really get that noise gate dialed in properly, so I have a really, really tight sound and really minimize the amount of bleed, which really, really helps.
Go ahead, Greg.
So years ago, when I was very new in the business, I had the opportunity to do a load-in for Rush at the Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, which was a very, very highly sought-after venue at the time, and was surprised to see that the amplifier heads for both bass and guitars were on stage, but the actual speaker cabinets were remoted in ISO cabinets underneath the stage, and that was transformational. I've really learned from that and seen that when I've seen that used by other people, when I've been able to do that, it really cleans up everything on a stage sound.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, Cody, that's great. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I'll make it really quick. A lot of the tech stuff was already covered, but I'm just going to talk about a very, very common mistake that I see front of house mixing for a live band, and that is during sound check, almost everyone starts at the left of their console and moves right. So they start at the kick drum and they move across and move across and move across, and by the time they get to the lead vocal, there's no space left. And for most genres of music, vocal is king. For most genres of music, the lead vocals are what everybody cares about and everything else is. So assuming that I've got a separate monitor engineer, assuming that we've got some monitors that are semi-set so that I can, the whole band can actually perform, I start at the lead vocal, and I get the lead vocal sounding right and sounding present and sounding in a pocket. And then I circle back to putting my rhythm section together and putting the bed together and basically mixing everything around the lead vocal, as opposed to mixing everything around the lead kick drum, which is far too many concerts that I go to.
Next question.
From Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. An equipment rental client requires a compact music playback device that can fade in and fade out music with the press of one button once volume is set. Ideas?
Mickey says QLab, which I don't know if it would be as compact because you still need a computer to do that, but it does make sense. I mean, I think that QLab is going to do all the things you need it to do. You can tie it into something that's there. You would probably need a laptop. So that'd be your compact playback device, would be a laptop and probably a USB interface, out to make that work. Just make sure not to use the headset output from your computer. There are USB to XLR outputs. That's what you want to use. Another thing to look at is on the iPad, there's an app called Go Button. So Go Button is an iPad app that is just designed to have music and effects and everything else. And so the iPad might be a little bit easier for them to use than QLab. And they can assign all the things that they want. They can plug that output in. I have not used Go Button, but I have seen it on someone else using it. And they seem to get everything that we needed out of it. So, but Go Button is another. That runs on the iPad itself. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin asks, what's the most cost-effective yet good enough mic preamp to connect my Audio-Technica mic to my computer? I want more gain than the USB offers.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I would look at the Mode 2 M2. These are really nice interfaces. They're built well. They're nice solid metal interface or metal box, and they have some decent metering on the front panel. Individual phantom 48 volts phantom power on every channel, which is rather unique at these types of consumer grade lower end interfaces, but they can be had right now for $199 in the US, and they do have a loopback channel as well. I'll mention that. So if you are live streaming or if you are needing a mix minus for a Zoom meeting, you can easily do that with the Mode 2 mixer control software. The preamps, I believe the preamps on these are about 60 dB of gain. That should be more than enough for that ATR microphone. They're nice, clean, quiet preamps.
Next question.
Norm Clare from Waterloo, Ontario wants to know, how far away do you think we are from being able to send and receive a 32-bit float digital signal from a transmitter receiver via AES into our 32-bit enabled recorders or mixers?
A while, mostly because a lot of people won't do it. I think that it's heavier, and I think that the amount of overhead from a pipeline perspective is so high that one of the things you get into when you're dealing with live is that there is a certain practicality to it. So there's the we'd like to make it the perfect thing, and you want to have the highest quality devices, but then you also, because 32-bit oftentimes is I don't have time to spend the kind of effort that I needed to record that, and so, or there's a really wide dynamic range, but typically, I don't know if I don't know if people would use it as much as we think we would. I mean, we find that 32-bit doesn't get used as much because someone says, well, I can control that and I have enough headroom to do it with my fingers. Mickey points out that 32-bit float RF exists. AES does not support 32-bit float. But yeah, so I think that the complexity of adding 32-bit and then the advantage of that when you have professional audio engineers managing the signal, there's just the ROI is so low and the lift is so high. I don't think that you're going to see it anytime soon. 32-bit record makes a big difference. So next question.
Peter Belbin from Houston, Texas. Henry Ramos from Yonkers, New York. Lately been using Rode Wireless for videography over hardware Sony Lav. Is it worth upgrading the Rode Lav to a Countryman or better mic for such a low-cost setup?
Alex?
Well, upgrading, certainly the microphone is always going to give you better sound quality. So is it worth it? Probably. It's going to sound better. Now, here's the thing. I know it seems weird to buy an expensive microphone on a lower cost transmitter like that, but just remember, if you're going to be doing this, I don't know if this is a thing that you get paid for, but in the long term, it is a much better investment. And, here's the thing. You don't have to keep the Rode Wireless forever. But you know what? If you have a really high-end microphone that sounds amazing, you're always going to keep that microphone, and you can always change your transmitters to something else more reliable and robust down the road. But man, that's the microphone's your first line of defense. That is so critical. So if you can swing it, I'd say absolutely, and you'll probably be very happy with a higher-end mic.
Next question.
Peter Belbin from Houston, Texas asks, Alex, how did your testing of Voyage audio ambisonic mics work out? Pros and cons of each, and compare with other mics and surround capture techniques.
Yeah, so this is the USB one. I thought I had the Dante one around here somewhere. Anyway, this is the USB version of the Voyage mic, and then I also have been testing the Dante version of the same mic. So this is a second order ambisonic mic. So there's 8 mic capsules. The 9th signal is virtual. I also have an Ambio, a core. Second order Ambio first order HX3 first order from Zoom. By far, the Voyage ones are my favorites. I mean, it's not really close. so I've taken them out a lot to shoot with them. I have two different ways of approaching it. The one that I use the most, the one that I wanted the most was the Dante one, the Dante version. The one that I use the most is the USB version. And so I think that you have to kind of think about what you need if you're getting the Dante version, because it's a little more expensive. It's $3,000. I would not buy anything other than the USB if I was going to spend less than $1,500. So under $1,500, the USB version of the Voyage is the answer in my opinion. It doesn't have it. What it has here is on. I can have a headphone, so obviously, so I can listen to it. But it has a USB out, and so I can plug this directly into my phone. And that's the way I use it primarily. So the reason it's on this tripod is this tripod fits into a arrow quiver that I throw over my shoulder, and I wander into the woods, like where I wander into wherever I want to go. And this thing just kind of goes along with me in a little quiver. And when I want to record something, I pull this out. It's in 90 seconds. I'm set up, with this ambisonic, whether it's a location, a farmer's market, whatever I want to grab. It is very, very easy for me to grab it. It's very quiet. The problem with the core, the Ambio, and especially the HX3 is the self noise. From the systems themselves are a bit high. And compared to a digital pipeline, they aren't. It's not close. Now these guys make a software for. Voyage makes a software for the phone, so you see all the levels coming in. You can record them all separately. Now the big advantage of the Dante version, of course, is that it's Dante. So you plug in, you're plugging an Ethernet into the back. It's PoE. So if you're doing it in the field, if I have that, let's see, thought I had it within reach. I was just doing something with it. That's why I feel like it's here. Oh, here it is. It's right in front of me. So using one of these little patch boxes, I have a couple different ones, but this is basically you can inject power into the Dante. So what I do is I have my Scorpio, which does not have PoE. I plug it in, it goes in and out of here, and this will inject the power into it. So, and this can be powered. This is just a little 12 volt on the way in, so it can. You can plug that in, just put it in your battery pack. Usually I use the little small rig, little square batteries that have they have barrels on the top, barrel connectors. So I just barrel that power into my Scorpio bag. And then I have it back and forth. Now the cool thing about it is there's a DSP. The reason it's so much more expensive is the Dante version has a DSP in it. And it will recreate, oh, I want 5.1, I want 7.1, I want stereo, I want whatever, and I want first order. I don't know why I do that, but first order or second order, and it'll do all of those things and deliver those channels properly back over Dante to the mixer. So that solves the problem of the reason that you might want that is that you get into it, like for some of the live stuff we wanted to do, I need a 5.1 signal to the Scorpio so that we can send it, we can pack it onto a transmission output. And so I can't do the 5.1 mix down from ambisonic in the Scorpio. More's the pity. Anyway, if anyone's listening from sound devices, I mix down. So anyway, so it's better if what we had to do in the past with an ambisonic is take the raw channels, embed them, and then do the processing somewhere else. But we can do that with the mic itself. So it's nice and compact. It works really well. So those, I will say that the Voyage right now are, in my opinion, are the best based on what I've been recording ambisonic for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years now, and these are the best ones that I've used. I know there's ones that have higher order ambisonic and everything else. And the reason the ambisonic is really important now is because the ASAF format is very ambisonic heavy, the new Apple format. And it's really good for headphone stuff. It's not as good for, you're going to do a lot of processing if you're going to use it for something else. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
I just wanted to ask a couple things. One, the USB one, what's the price point on that?
$9.99. Yeah,
Okay.
so it costs less. I'll say that the Ambio compared to this is not competitive. Like it's not like at this point the Ambio, which I own 2 of, not that I'm bitter, but that it's not. I'm keeping them as reference right now, but I'll probably sell the Ambio at some point because I never use it anymore. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
And sorry, the other thing I wanted to ask was, so the app, you can record in the app. So do you have with your phone, are you using a USB dock or anything to be able to add extra power or extra storage along with this?
I haven't because my iPhone has a lot of storage, so I don't really think about the storage that much. That hasn't been a significant concern for me. I'm recording those to cloud too, so I'm copying those to the cloud or it's getting backed up to the cloud from the phone. So to iCloud, I'm not doing anything special. So it's available in my folders. By the time I get home, usually it's sitting on my Mac. So it's a really fast and easy way to record. But there's no you definitely can run this through a USB interface. So you could have the USB out of this going into a USB interface that also takes power that goes into the computer. So if you want to save it to an extra drive, you can identify that inside the app itself. But I don't. I've just been recording straight to the phone. It's been easy enough. For me, I'm so used to video that audio files seem minuscule compared to what I'm used to. So they haven't been a problem. I will say that if you're into ambisonic, you get into it with the HX3, but this is the way to get into it, in my opinion, is this mic here, because I've just been so happy with it. It took me a little while to figure out. You have to push the little button at the end a bunch of different times. There's like levels, and there's what the headset is, and everything else, and that's the challenge. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia says, I am now using the Scarlet Solo 3rd generation. Seems good in addition to the built-in mics for Zoom H6. What would be a good mic to add for mobile use?
I go to Alex.
Yeah, so it depends when you say mobile use. What exactly do you mean by that? Do you mean just another XLR compact mic you can put on a stand? It really depends on, if you just need another microphone that's inexpensive, the Shure MV7X is a really good sounding dynamic and address microphone that's, can be had for well under $200 US that you can plug into the second channel on that thing. If it's that you want another microphone that's even smaller, maybe, that you can rig up to, say, a camera, you should look at the MVI series from Shure. They do have some options there that are more compact that you can take a look at. But yeah, so it really depends on how you're going to use it.
Sorry, I had a little technical problem there. Anyway, thanks to everyone who joined us here on Christmas Eve here in the United States. It was good to see everybody here, and really nice. These Wednesdays now are audio Wednesdays. So as you see, there's audio questions. so we're audio heavy questions, and it was so great to have so many great questions from the audience. Thank you so much for asking. Great questions to have us all learn a little bit more about audio production. And thanks to the incredible panel, these audio experts here who were able to join and share in their knowledge. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this happen day and night. Whenever we need to do a show, we're 7 days a week. We've got different teams managing different software and hardware pipelines, making sure that all of this happens. And we very much appreciate everybody's hard work. Today, this is episode 2101. It's incredible. We traveled 28. We would have the Tlaloc Traversal. We would have done this. If we'd done this in person, we would have traveled 28,000 miles. That's 44,000 kilometers. That is 218 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Good to have you on the horse there, Brian. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. It's now that I've seen how clean and awesome everybody else's setup has become, now I feel
yours looks great.
Grossly inadequate, but
no, yours looks great.
It's real. It's one of those. This is my actual back of my room.
Mine's just a pile of junk on shelves that is out of focus.
If you get everything that you get enough out of focus, it ends up being, that's okay. That'll
exactly. Work. No, it totally works. No, I think yours looks great. So, yeah, excellent. All right, we'll see you guys hopefully next week. Another audio tour next week. All right, thanks.
Cool.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Go up like mudslides, and everywhere I drive. All right. Bye-bye.